these kids are not taught that in high school. So when you get to the point, and I got the AIB, I was already at Pratt for 3 years. So I was like, okay. And I saw the holes in the program. And that's why I was like, you were kind of the beginning of me being a hard ass. And I said, why am I here wasting my time teaching you if I'm not going to give you real world experience? I don't need your love. I don't need your act. I'm already out there.
And before we begin, I just wanted to say this video is sponsored by My Air Bridge. Hello folks and welcome back. In this special guest-filled episode, I have reached back to my former college painting instructor, James Houston. It's been over 10 years since we've really kind of talked and conversed, and I have him on today to bring you some insight and to give. He's a career artist and has a lot of experience teaching. So hopefully you guys can take something away from this. He definitely influenced me and instilled good habits and helped me develop quite a bit in my formative years. So let's begin. So hello everybody, thank you for watching. So it's great to see you again.
You too, absolutely. Good to see you.
What have you been busy with since the last time, we've kind of met and talked? And that was I think 2009, 2008, and you were instructing at the Art Institute of Boston.
Art Institute since really 2010, 2011. So I've been here in the city, and I was teaching at Pratt, still doing that. And then that lasted until about 2017. And then they changed the whole program at Pratt. So the illustration program is pretty much kind of decimated. They're doing more graphic design right now. So the class that I was teaching for many years and others had kind of disappeared. So, I didn't really want to teach other classes than what I had. And then I started teaching at FIT in 2017. So that's where I'm now. I'm part-time tenure there, which is pretty nice. Awesome. And,
So you've been teaching a long time, basically. How long would you say you're an art instructor in any kind of capacity? And what fields of art do you usually instruct on?
I guess I've been teaching since 97, so that's 23 years. I've seen a lot. And so it's funny, by the time I had you, I'd already been teaching for like 13 years or whatever. I went to Pratt, and then went to grad school at New York Academy, so I've seen a lot of talented people.
Awesome. What do you think separates? Because you probably see every capacity of student there. You might see people that are hobbyists. You might see people that come through on a free ride from their parents. And you might see, of course, people that are super serious that want to be a career artist. Are there kind of common, maybe personality traits or just habits that you see from the people that do go through and end up, truly doing something with the knowledge and the skill that you build up, going to like an art school versus the people that kind of fizzle out and, end up working at like the coffee shop maybe for another 12 years?
Yeah, no, that's a good question because I guess, in anything in life, drive is the most important thing. So if you have students who are really not that talented, but they have a lot of drive, they can kill somebody with talent any day because they want it bad enough. It's like we all have the same 24 hours in a day, depending on how much time you want to spend pursuing your dream. That makes it. And you have the ones who are super talented and they never grow. They never challenge themselves.
I've seen a lot of that too. Especially when I was at the art school, I see people that just blow your mind, and then they didn't take it seriously. They showed up half the classes. They weren't doing assignments. They just didn't care. But you could see it, and they had so much, kind of base talent and skill that they could work from. It just wasn't utilized. So I think a lot of it, like you said, is attitude, and what you want to do with that.
Absolutely. It's funny that each school is different. I've taught. At Pratt, I've taught at the Art Institute, I taught at New Hampshire Institute of Art, I've taught at other places. And the private schools tend to have students that are a little more aggressive. And even Art Institute had aggressive students to a certain extent. But it's like when I have sophomores or juniors and they're already working in the field, you know that they're going to make it. They're like, all right. So I've had many sophomores leave through sophomore year at Pratt because they were getting so much work. So you really can't tell who's going to be good and stuff like that. It's very, very difficult because you have a lot of hope and promise, but so many factors come into being an
A
artist.
lot.
And
Let's break that. I don't think I've ever really broke that down in any kind of capacity in the hundreds of little episodes that I've put out there. But there is a lot. Some are internal, of course, like we've mostly been talking about, just like your drive, your ambition, your discipline. But a lot of them too are somewhat coincidental and, of course, external. That we have lesser control of, but we have to kind of create our own sort of like situations. Like we have to set it up. We can't wait, right? Opportunity. We have to kind of create opportunities. We can't just sit around idling waiting for that perfect kind of storm to happen. So what would you say are some of these different factors that kind of can play into some of these success stories?
um, okay, so there's several different things that I look at. Um, the whole thing now is like one is gender. There's tons of girls in college now compared to when I was in school. When I was in illustration, there were two girls, and the whole class was men. Now, 30 years later, 35 years later, it's the opposite. There are, you
Mm.
know, 23 women in the class, and there's two guys.
I
So you're
think
like,
I think I see that same trend. I think I'm privately mentoring more females right now and less males, but even 5 years ago, that was completely the opposite.
well, yeah, but I mean, I've seen that trend for really almost 20 years, but it used to be 50-50, and then like in the last 5 or 10 years, it's been totally mostly women, which is all right.
Yeah,
Problem is that a woman has two choices compared to a guy. They can be a wife and a mother, and they can be an artist. And I've known females who have decided not to have families just because they wanted to be an artist. That's pretty hardcore. I mean, they just said, "I'm not having kids. I'm just gonna do art. That's what I want, and that's it." Whether a kid happens along the way, I don't know. But women have those choices where they can say, "Okay, I'll do art, but if it gets too hard or whatever, I still want to have a family." And when you put the kid factor in there, it's a lot harder. And for a guy, you want to have a family too, but even for a guy, um, you're not the same role as a mother. So unless you're a single father and you're taking care of your kids, you still have to work your butt off. Like both genders have to do it. So
yes.
that makes a huge difference in really what type of art and where you go in the art world, because you have to think in terms of if you have to make a living and you have to have these basic needs for your family, you're going to have to find something full time. It's extremely difficult unless you have a partner or your wife or whatever, and husband are making great money, and then you can actually kind of supplement it with your illustration. Those are really tough choices to make because, and then even after 2000, you can't really illustrate without a full time job, or at least without at least something part time coming in, because everything's tripled in price.
Yeah.
I mean, my apartment used to be $500 in the 90s. I mean, and we had three different roommates, and I could work part time and I could illustrate, and I had money left over. Now you have a full time job, or you're working constantly, and you have no money left over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not helped artists at all. And so you have to really decide: am I going to stay home for a while until I get things going? Am I going to pool together with a bunch of other artists and have a studio? Do I want to have a family? If I do have a family, how can I do it and also survive? And kind of, so all these factors start coming into your play. And then once you have the kids, it's like your time is,
I am navigating that, as we speak with a 2 month old and a 3 year old, and I'm working hand in hand with my wife to kind of make all of this, like, to keep everybody afloat, and it is challenging, and it to say the least, and it's a survival thing on a week to week basis, where it, even as we were saying, the gender roles for this, as the father, because I'm the artist in this situation. My wife teaches full time, and
oh,
she works for the public, so she gets
right.
all the benefits that I get to ride in on her. She gets paid time off, but like for a working freelancer like myself, if I'm not content creating or if I'm not producing, I'm not
Mhm.
marketing myself, if any second that I'm not working, I'm not really going to make any money. No government's ever going to step in and help me in that capacity. So what I have to do, of course, so my schedule is ultimately flexible in our scenario. So I'm cutting out my entire afternoons, essentially every weekday from noon probably to about 7, which used to be work hours, good work hours, because I'm awake, I'm kind of active, my mind's actually working. So now I have to get a couple things done in the morning, and then I'm taking off all afternoon, where I get any kind of steam left in my tank. That's what I have to kind of put my best foot forward to kind of produce the work. And it's hard to kind of create really good art when your mind and your body is like fried at the end of a long day, and especially when you have a 3-year-old just siphoning your life force, and your creativity out of you, because they're demanding. And you don't want to, you want to be, of course, a good parent, and you want to be a good artist. But yeah, and it has affected us both in slightly different ways. But I agree with you. Like, my wife is definitely there with the infant full time, and it's like there's just things that she's able to provide for him that he wants, that I kind of get a little bit of a easier escape on, because I don't have to be there quite as tentatively as she does. But it's difficult part or aspect of our lives and career to kind of balance both things.
Absolutely. And I mean, most people do it fairly well. A lot of artists tend to go into certain things that can pay residuals. They license their work, or they might children's books, or they might do something where they can actually benefit from getting their project done, and then it brings in more money. Some people do real estate. Some people do maybe the stores. They start doing a lot of things and sell things online to their stores. Or if you're in the comic industry, you go to cons all the time to try to make a few $1,000s.
Pre 2020.
Like so, but yeah, it's you're always gonna hustle.
It's a hustle. That's my new line. I've said that more times last month than anything else. Every day I'm hustling, and it's true.
Unless you're an art director for a ad agency or something like that, and you got a cush job, and you're a designer and you slash illustrate, and you got that going pretty well. It's always hustling. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've done so many different things. It's just kind of like, I just did an interview with Mel Magazine
Mm-hmm.
for the Maximum Carnage series that they had at Marvel.
Awesome.
And I don't even remember coloring Maximum Carnage, even though I'm in the book, because it was like a blur when I worked
Yep.
at Marvel. 5 years of a blur. All I was doing was just working 20 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd sleep on the weekends. And I said, on the weekends when you had those books back in the 90s, they give you the book and say, oh, we need it by Monday. And it's like Friday. And you're like, I have to do 22 pages of coloring? So my whole schedule's blown. I tell my friends, I can't come out. They're like, what? It's like, I can't. I got to get this book done. And it's like, if I come in Monday morning and it's not done, I'm like, I'm not going to get any more work. So when you're not underneath that pressure, and there's a lot of industries now that are like that, you have to be super dedicated to wanting and understanding that the sacrifice is that you will not have a social life, you will not have normalcy, and that's hard for students to understand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might miss a lot of stuff. It's like, well, I don't want to miss it. It's like, well, then get a regular job. Be a nice, because you're gonna miss stuff.
And
You just
sometimes, yeah, sometimes that is the better option for people, is just to like keep art as a side thing and just do your regular 9 to 5, and that way you can enjoy it. Because the second that art becomes your livelihood, you think about it entirely different, and it's never the same from there
no,
out. Like, I can't remember the last time I literally painted something just for the pure enjoyment of it. I had to find a way to monetize it, and monetize it not once but maybe 3 or 4 times.
correct. Well, I'm an old dinosaur. I don't do anything digitally, so I mean, I'm amazed at what you do.
But you could
But
sell your paintings, and that they can make more than like any kind of little hustle that I'll get on a digital piece, though. So that you have going for you.
yes, I could. But I mean, I just like tangible form. I like to hold things. I like to have things in frames. I like to say, okay, like I'm gonna be doing stuff on a Shopify site or
Hmm.
a website that's similar to that, and I'm only going to sell originals. I'm going to sell prints because I don't want to deal with the whole inventory, the on demand stuff, and all that
Yep.
stuff. If you're going to buy something from me, it's going to be original and it's going to be expensive, and it's because you're getting the only copy.
Hmm.
Tangible forms of stuff, and I always tell students, I said, well, if you're doing stuff on a computer, where's your backup? Where's your hard drive? Where's your second computer? And they go, what? I'm like, yeah, crash. it's gonna happen, and you have to be prepared for that, and you have to be
Yep.
prepared, like, and you have to back up everything constantly. And so, and I said, yeah, I said, and if there's an EMP in your neighborhood, your stuff doesn't exist anymore. It's basically gone. And so it's kind of like tangible stuff is like, for me, I just like it a little bit better. But I mean, what you guys are doing and what you're creating is amazing. And then how you print it out or how it looks is fantastic. And I'm getting kids now that are doing, and they're looking at ArtStation a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And their illustrations in pre-production style. And I said, okay, this is fine, but it's too general.
Yep.
You're doing applied illustration where in print and in the illustration world, that's one genre. You need to go a little bit more tighter, a little more line, a little more graphic novel type, so that we can kind of see, because it's too general for the art director. They're going to be like, I need more detail. And so, but a lot of kids are really into the ArtStation artwork and artists, and it's like I even showed them your website and such because they were showing different people from ArtStation.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, former student, and look at his work, and then you can see when they tighten up things, and then other times when they have loose, kind of designs. So it's good. And
I think that's a huge thing for students to get by. A lot of them have trouble pushing an image somewhere between like the 8 and 12 hour mark. And they don't really realize, like, to really get the most out of some things, you got to sink in that time to go like 14 maybe to 30 hours to really see what you're capable of in regards to just the overall quality. And I don't think every piece needs to be a 30-hour marathon. No, but you should switch that up, of course, between the quicker, more deliberate studies and stuff. But yeah, once in a while, you really do need to put that time in, like you said, to it's like a stress test in a way to kind of see where you're at.
well, you have to depend on the job you get too, and the art director you're working for. So it's kind of like, that you have a great tutorial that has the castle, and you
Mm-hmm.
have all flat, and it has all the big shapes, and then detail, more detail, more detail, and to the point where it's like now it's a fully rendered castle background with horses and carriages and like medieval type of stuff. And it's like, yeah, there you go. If it's going to be a comp for a meeting, it needs to be well done. And I said, think of your digital stuff as comps that need to be really well done because they're going to a wider audience. If it's going to be a behind the house pre-production thing, you don't really, and you can keep it loose, and they get the
Mm-hmm.
general. So it's I say the thumbnail is general, the preliminary is more specific, and the final is like what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And so it's like those different stages. So they're getting it, but you have to teach them that. And I said there's so many things in illustration that are unwritten, and that's why
Yeah.
you're here. They don't. There's no book on illustration, and it's just like there are, but they talk about creativity. They don't talk about the professional side of it, and that's why the students are there.
That was the hardest thing coming out of art school, going, trying to transition to a more professional setting, is that even though there were classes at AIB that they were called like the business of illustration and stuff, and Robert Kaufman did his best to kind of convey a lot of that, but so much of that is just you got to learn it like as you go, like hands on, because they could tell you this is what an invoice is or this is how you do this, but like until you're like it kind of hits you in the face and you have to like really go through the motion doing it, like not a lot of it just never clicked for me until I was like too deep to like even look by it.
You usually wake up when you get screwed and you haven't been paid in 3 months, and you're
Yeah.
like, wait a second, what's going on here? Like, I don't get it. They just avoid your calls, and you're like, oh my god, it's like it's happening to me. No.
Yeah, it's a real life learning curve there. But yeah, I speaking like before I forget that thought, one course I took with you, because I took a couple, was you had the comic class, and
Oh
because
yeah.
you were really into that and you were really good with that, and I was like, okay, I needed to fill in a spot. I remember taking that. You were, and this is why I was probably my favorite instructor there, is because you took everything so seriously, and I think that's what a student needs to hear. They need to hear the truth. They need people that are honest with them, and they need to see how the real world works. And that's you were probably one of the only people there that really provided that sort of insight. So when we show up, we're all wanting to draw comics. Like everyone wants to draw a comic. Every student I have, oh, I want to do my own web comic. I want to do my own anime. It's like, you for a second have any capacity, know how much work that is, and to do it well. Like anybody can kind of do it, but like to do it well is like a whole other story. And that's the first, I think maybe the only class was yours that I actually dropped out of after the first week. I was like, there is no way I have the time to kind of commit to that level. That, and so it's like kind of, you have to know what you're capable of or what you have the time to even manage. And it was just like, it was kind of like a wake up call, but it's like I knew I would not be able, I'd have to half-ass everything that you assign. And you didn't deserve that, I didn't deserve that. It'd be a waste of time. So it's like, I think there's a huge commitment that
Yeah.
people need to kind of acknowledge and realize before jumping into certain things. And you've always provided that sort of insight of like how, okay, this is actually a bunch of work. You're gonna this is like X amount of hours a day that you'll need to kind of figure out these assignments, or you need X amount of panels, and that requires this stage, and this stage. Like, okay, that's way too much time for me. And I remember I had to bounce from that, and I always kind of hated it. But yeah, I think they were making us take 4 or 5 classes at a time, and having that, some of them are very easy to prep for. Like if you just do the bare minimum what they ask, like, okay, it's a joke. But like, because that class and a lot of your classes were it was serious and they were industry focused, like, yeah, you were putting at least 3 hours in between sessions and stuff to make sure you had something right presentable for the critique wall, for the critique session. And I remember in your classes there, and I would, because I always worked and did my best to get the best of my ability something presentable on that wall. But I remember you kind of drilling, let's say drilling that truth into so many people that would show up with a bare minimum effort. And I kind of got a little chuckle out of it, because like I knew they needed it and they needed to hear it, but like you could just see them like shrink up and coil, like, oh god, here it comes. So like they knew you were gonna put the hammer down. And I think that's such a, it's a make it or break it thing, for students. Like they need someone that's not their friend, that's not their mom, to tell them how it is. And because like that's how the art world is. It's like it's people that are not just that they kind of want it, they have to be very hungry for it. And you have to be able to kind of soak up that sort of level of criticism.
Yeah.
Like what are your thoughts on that in regards to how many students you've kind of seen through? Do you have any funny stories? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, see, that's the difference between, as far as like, when I went to Pratt, it was very serious. Okay. The private art schools like SVA, Pratt, Parsons, Art Center, they're serious schools. I mean, people go there because they want to be the best and they want to make all the money in the industry. So I went in there and I was like kind of not sure if I could fit in and stuff like that, because I transferred in. And when you're there, I mean, the competition's fierce. I mean, when I was in school, it was fierce. It was so fierce when I got there. When I graduated in '86. In 1985, the class before me was so good. They started this, what they called, it was kind of like the year-end critique, and they had like all the school would show their work, but only 10% of each department would get to the show. So basically,
wow.
You picked to be in that show because there were 4,000 students, so they only allowed a certain number of people. So the class that was before me, or a couple of years before me, were like a super class. I mean, they had everybody that was like in the business now. Kent Williams, they had George Pratt, they had all these comic book guys that were great. They had John Van Fleet, they had Ed Lee, they had all these people, and they were all working. They were working before they graduated, and their portfolios are like insanely good. And I was like, holy crap. Oh my god.
That lit a fire behind you, huh?
Yeah, tell me about it. And I'm like, how am I ever going to get as good as that? So with that mentality, and the thing is, the teachers were not accessible. I saw the teacher once a week. You couldn't call him. There's no email. There's no online. And then I had a teacher who was a ball breaker, David Passalacqua. He's like one of the greatest teachers in New York City ever. He'd say, "Is it done?" And you go, "Yeah, it's kind of like, if it's not done, I'm not going to talk about it." And he walked away. And we joke about in the 80s, like, people would take a lighter and it's like, oh, this is too good. We're going to, burn this and stuff. And people are like, oh my God. It's like today they'd be in therapy for 20 years. Yeah. But back, compliment. If somebody wanted to burn your work or like rip it off the wall, it means it was the best piece in the class. So we had competition. And nowadays, after like all these different years, these kids are not taught that in high school. So when you get to the point, and I got the AIB, I was already at Pratt for 3 years. So I was like, okay, and I saw the holes in the program, and that's why I was like, you were kind of the beginning of me being a hard ass, and I said, why am I here wasting my time teaching you if I'm not going to give you real world experience? I don't need your love. I don't need your act. I'm already out there. So I'm here just collecting a small paycheck to help you get to where you need to go. And if you're not mature enough to understand what I'm saying to you, then you can't handle it. And I wanted to be hard because the art director, when I used to go to art directors' offices, they look at your portfolio and just go, okay, all right, 5 minutes, and you'd be waiting. And they'd say, okay, we'll give you a call. Or, all right, thanks for stopping by. Or we used to drop off the portfolio, and you'd look at to see if they actually shuffled stuff and looked at it. And you'd go, there's 30 portfolios in the corner. I mean, it was like totally, more competition than you could ever know. Now, the emails, I tell students, because look, I said, you'll never meet an art director again unless you go to an opening or something like that. And I had an art director. My friend Min came, and he told a senior class at FIT, says, you'll never see me again. This is the last time you'll see me. So your emails are going to have to be something that's going to catch my attention, or you're going to have to figure out a way to kind of like, get my eye because I have so many other people giving me stuff. So if I'm not going to be real with the student, it's really a disservice. And I mean, nothing against other professors, but some professors, again, are there to be liked. I'm there to teach. I have other stuff to do. And primarily, the only reason why I still teach to this day and such like that, it's not because of the money. It's because I learn from the students, which is great. And also at the same time, it kind of like keeps me fresh with what's going on. And, like with you.
Same here.
It's like, but at the same time, I feel like I have a need to just be honest because so many teachers are not. What is wrong with you? Like, why tell them the truth? Oh, well, they're not ready for it. They're just, a lot of teachers think you're kids. I'm like, how? 20 years old, a kid. They're old enough to have a kid, a baby. They're old enough to own a house. They're old enough to have a car. They're not old enough to drink, but they can go to war and still kill somebody. So how is this person a kid? And I just never understood that, And then plus, my background is I grew up on a farm.
Yeah, me too.
I grew up on a farm, and you know what a work ethic is. Yep. You're not in until fucking 7 o'clock. Okay, get your ass up now.
You're up. By the time I was 12, at least, in the early, like, or mid-90s, we were working outside, we were 12 years old. And now there's this whole stigma. It's like, you got to get all these visas. They don't want kids working, like, till they're 15, 16, maybe even 18. There's a huge sensitivity thing, of course, nowadays. Like, we don't even need to touch because, like, it's a known thing to anyone that I think that's at least our age and older. It's like, there is a huge problem with that, and it's raising even more problems that'll probably trickle down the line more so. But like, people need a little bit of that blunt, honest love to kind of grow, mature as well. I think maturity, people aren't ready to improve. They're not ready for that feedback. And just like you said, and you need to just at one point kind of cut that cord and get real with things. Yeah.
Well, I always played the role as the art director. So when you had me in class and stuff like that, that's why I'd ask you questions like, so this is the best you can do? Well, no, I had all this other. It's like, well, then when are you going to show your best stuff? Like, everybody has things to do. When are you going to spend the time and take the extra time to show your best stuff? You're not going to improve unless you show your best stuff every assignment, every class, and you won't be professional until you learn how to do that every assignment, every time. It's like, you can shirk it off sometimes, but it's like you're never going to get to that level of some of these professionals that are consistently unbelievable. You're like, what the hell? How's this guy doing it? Well, they have a standard that is so high, and they've worked so hard to get to that point that I try to at least get students understanding that you're good, but you can be better if you push. And I usually get better results at the end of the semester because I'm pushing you and I'm challenging you, and therefore people learn something. Like if you look at Rate My Pro professor, whatever, it's like I think there was one kid that said Jim is a prick, but I lot. Which like
I believe
that's good. I'll take that.
If you don't get at least one of those a turn, then maybe you aren't doing your job enough, right?
Totally, because it's like, well, that's what I'm there for. You're paying at Pratt, they're paying $55,000 a year. At our institute, you're paying $45,000 a year. That's a lot of fucking money. Yep. Okay. You're in much more debt than I ever took on when I got out of school, okay? So you're paying 3 times what I paid, and now you're going out to a workforce that's going to pay you half of what I paid. I said you have to be serious. This is like this is really tough stuff, and this is a tough business. To last in it for 25, 30 years, like I have, or like you're doing right now, you have to have a fortitude about you that is just you have to kind of like want it and dig deep, because there's going to be days where you're just working 100 hours a week, and you're doing it love what you do. So I think it's like I just happen to be that way. But like I said, my teacher Paz Lockaway, he was a ball breaker, man. I mean, he's just like, if it's not done, I'm not gonna look at it. I can't help you, and blah blah blah. And he would make suggestions, and if you did it, he would give you a better grade. If you didn't, he'd keep it there. I usually had kids crying in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
I may have only seen that once in one of the classes, but yeah, it's always a possibility people aren't ready for the truth.
your life is crashing around you, but I'm just trying to help you understand that you need to kind of man up or woman up and just like take responsibility. And how many times did I kick people out of class? They came with
a couple times a month it happened.
Okay, get out. I don't need to see you. You don't come to class empty-handed. What the hell's wrong with you?
Like, why bother? Like everyone, it's excuses. People love to come up with excuses for themselves, and
they want to hear the crit so they can get an idea and then come back and do a nice idea. It's like, no. I'm sorry. You don't deserve to be in this classroom. I'm sorry. So, these guys have busted their ass, got their shit together. And I always stood up for people who did the stuff first. And, like, even if people are late with stuff, I put on the thing late, and they got marked down a half a grade. It's not fair to people who are busting their ass to get the same grade as somebody that isn't. And that's the way it is in life in some ways. But, I mean, there's always ups and downs to that. So
I've always tried to take some of that mentality in with my students now, because I've been teaching for I think I just hit about 5 years in 2020, and it's kind of I'm kind of imagining myself as the art director, and you have to ask them all the questions so that you can kind of see where their gears are turning, where they're getting caught up, and how they're kind of thinking. Because like you can look at work all day, but that doesn't give you enough information, kind of like what's under the hood all the time. You got to see mentally where their blocks are. And you always had said that that's what separates a professional from a student, is that a professional will know, forever, they'll have a really good answer for why they're doing every specific thing in a picture, why this is like that, why is this over here. As students, is, that you get the shrug, or I don't know, or I felt like that. And it's like that, that's a good sign. It's like, no, we have to break this down. This is why you will probably want to do this, or what you should do to kind of achieve that specific goal. And yeah, that's how I've been trying to channel you through the online teaching field, the CGMA and to this. And yeah,
I used to laugh when kids would take me more than once. They'd be like, wow, you're coming back for more? Oh my God. Okay. So you must be serious. So, but at the same time, yeah, anything esoteric in pictures, people love to do. And you're like, why is that there? Because, art directors, they're going to scrutinize over everything.
Yep.
Color. Why is this person that size? What's this? What's that? And you're like, if you don't have an answer, you're like, you're out of a job. So it's like, I think basically the training I try to do is to get you so that you can kind of run out of school and kind of be up to speed on the coldness that you're going to face with people who are not your parents. And kids today, they treat all adults like their parents.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not your parent, right? I don't have to be nice. I don't have to take your crap, and such. So, you got to remember that even though in the age of your parents or grandparents, you have to have a certain different respect than you do your parents. And a lot of people don't have that respect. So, I'm getting good results. It's like I'm not so old school that it's like, I'm getting complaints.
Yeah.
Because I tell them in the front, look, here, so you can call me Jim. A lot of times, people now they call it teacher's professor.
Yep.
You're going to disrespect me no matter what. It doesn't matter if you call me Jim or Professor. If you don't respect me, it doesn't matter. So I said, I'm telling you right now, this is the way it's working, and I'm looking at you as a peer, and I have a 30-year head start. That's about it. So you can join me, or you can shirk away and be upset. So it's a good way to work, and it's a little more straightforward. And a lot of top artists are like that with people and such, which helps them grow. There's tons of illustration stuff. There's tons of stuff online. I think tough love is really what this generation needs, because it's open. So I'm glad that you're picking up
And,
the
and
mantle.
it's worked for decades, and it works for decade for a reason. Like, you didn't get to where you were, I didn't get to where I am, based off of, sugarcoating things, or soft level, or tiptoeing around the important things. It's
Nope.
always been direct, and when you're direct with people, you can get a response, whether that's a good or bad response. That'll make or break the artist's career. But it's all about, like you said at the beginning, it's about the attitude that you
Sure.
have with it. You have to embrace that failure. You have to be open to feedback. And so, guys, as I mentioned, this video is sponsored by my AirBridge. Now, this is great for digital content creators like us. I use it all the time now. I send files that are very large. My patrons, I send it to my clients, and I send it to my students. And so what it is, it's a two-in-one app, and you can send this data through direct transfer, or you can save it to the storage and share it from there. So it's actually kind of like a more modern-day Dropbox. And this is also great for team environments. Everyone's working from home these days, so on the sharing screen you can select and read and write different features. It does have a very simple and classy layout. I actually really dig it. My AirBridge, of course, also features security and data expiration settings. So when you're sending anything, you can set a password, you can set whether you want to be notified that these people have viewed or downloaded your content. It basically has everything you need. And so basically, yeah, for me, I'm switching over to my AirBridge pretty much permanently now from Dropbox, moving out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things I teach more sophomore and juniors and freshmen, so I try to get them and I try to impress upon them that look, if you have good craft, you can last in this business for a long time. If you have marginal craft, you're going to hit a wall, and you're not going to be able to last. Because I mean, my name's not out there for illustration or whatever, because I've done fine arts, I've done murals, I've done comics, I've straddled all different avenues, and I'm like in the background with a lot of people, but I know a lot of people in the industry, so it's kind of like, okay, I can tell you that if you're going to get in that industry, you need this. If you're going to get in this, you could use this. And so I challenge sophomores and people because I say, well, that's not really a hand, or that that hand is like, it's bad. And I know it might be cool from high school, but it's terrible for professional. And it's like you really need to take ownership and do that. And when they do that, their work improves, and then they see you like, oh, it is better. And so like you took the reins and you went with it. Now I'll tell another student the same thing, and they'll be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, blah blah. Or I say,
Mm-hmm.
wood looks like French fries, or that like potato. It's like, can you kind of fix that, to a certain extent? And it's like, it's more just constructive to say, if you're looking at these professionals or whatever, try to follow them, go their same way. And it's been successful. I mean, it's funny because I have I think two students, they just got hired full time at SCAD.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Robert Castillo, you know him probably. He got hired in Douglas Ciros, and they're both earlier guys. And now they've been out for like 15 years, 17 years, So you can't replace good skill with a lot of times. Some people are very kind of quirky. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can go in any direction you want because you have great skills. And that's the only thing I try to say. Look, you can do whatever you want, but if you're too creative in your approach, you're very limited in the market. Hopefully, it'll turn out well, but you'll limit yourself and you'll be out of the market. So longevity is a tough thing in this business.
Yeah.
We're
It's
you,
constantly evolving, and that's, you have to kind of pivot your how you work, how you approach things, and of course how you handle business, because I mean, even from 2000 to 2010 and then 2000, it's changed rapidly, just because of how online the infrastructure works and what's it's insane. And that's, like you said, I love the teaching aspect of things, because I find all these new things, and by
yeah,
interacting with the younger folks, because
yeah,
it's like it's so easy to get stuck in your ways,
correct.
especially if something's working. You don't I'm a person of habit. Like, I'm very hesitant to get in and fiddle with something if it's working for me currently, and that can be a bad thing in itself. But yeah, for that reason, staying on top of things, that's always one of the fears I have. It's like, how can I maintain relevancy in today's, because there's more jobs popping up, there's more artists, there's more needs for art than there ever has been, but
Sure.
still being relevant is still like something that's always in my headspace.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that because I mean, like you said, critiques are definitely needed the most. And if I was going to do another channel or like hang out, one student wanted me to be like a co-anchor with them to kind of do something like that, which is kind of cool. I mean, critiquing is definitely needed because if you go on Pinterest and you go on Instagram, it's like kids go on there and they're like, "Oh, it's so cool," and I'm like, "Yeah, it is," but you know, it's like it works in this format, but it's not going to work in a real format where you get paid. And
Hmm.
so I have to learn to separate, what's cool and kind of, quirky compared to the real pro. And so what you're doing is you're mentoring them, and people should take information from a mentor like you who's already out there doing things because that is the ultimate kind of compliment and also the information you're looking for. You have to go with somebody that knows what they're doing, and that helps a lot. And there's a lot of talent out there, though. The kids are
There
like,
is.
it's like holy crap, man! It's like because they have all the aids that they can deal with as a kid. My thing though is like, okay, so what do you want? Like, what do you want in life? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you want? Like, do you want the house in Malibu? Do you want to travel the world? Do you want to theme? Do you want? You can do anything now. There's no regional restrictions.
Yep.
Once
Especially,
you computer, you can live in another country, you can live on another island, you can live anywhere and make sure that clients or you're targeting clients in your area. And that's a great thing for entrepreneurship. But
hmm
they don't know about that because they're like, oh, I guess I'll live here. And it's like, but why? Oh, it's a good point. So,
especially even within the states, like you said, like New York's insane, but like if you go to the middle of the country, you go even up into the upper north and corner, like rent can range right from anywhere from like a couple $1,000s all the way
right,
down to maybe 300 a month, depending on where in the states you are. So depending on, of course, the type of artist and the type of life you want, that may put different types of stress and needs on you,
true,
and can totally dictate the course of things. And I know artists that just carry a laptop and a tablet around and they do their client work and they just travel. They're never sediment. They just do their
incredible.
stuff and then they
Well,
pick up and move to do their stuff and pick up and move.
that's all they need. And that's the thing. You could be a world traveler. You could live anywhere else. I'm like the last person of my generation that's in New York.
Hmm.
Everybody started out in the 80s and 90s. They all left and went to the suburbs, have families, or they just left because it was too expensive. If I didn't have a rent stabilized apartment right now, I wouldn't be here either. Things have just tripled and doubled. And I tell students if they have advice, they like, well, how do you survive? And like, well, first thing, your overhead has to be low. So
Yep.
we're going to be at your mom's house, if it's going to be someplace on the beach, South Jersey or whatever, or you can find a place that's not that expensive, or you can gang up and have 5 or 6 roommates and keep it low and use your studio that way. That is your first thing because your loans are going to kill you, and
Hmm.
attack those first and get financially stable because students are not financially stable half the time, and art is one of the worst financial kind
Yep.
of jobs you could ever go into because you're always laying out money. It's
Yep.
like you're money before you get it, and it's just like you're always in a hole. So you got to figure out a way to kind of financially get yourself balanced so that you're not stressed out about that. And
That.
no, I don't like it. That's why I've always had a part-time job or a full-time job, always, because I grew up poor. I
Hmm.
grew, so it's like I always like to have a base so that I have something to work with, and then I work from there. And that way, it's kind of like been able to live a decent life and get decent jobs, but at the same time, it's like I'm not stressed about a bill
Hmm.
always in, and that's the worst. That's the worst.
Yeah, I think no matter what angle you come at it, yeah, for a lot of us, most of us, I think there's very few career artists that go into like a studio position. They just kind of idle and stay there, and they kind of go with the ease and the benefits of that, like that, and that's great, that's fine. But I think fewer and fewer people actually do that, and so a lot of us need more than one log on the fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like when something's fizzling out, okay, I've got, it's not going to be a crash. I got this. I can maybe put more resources into this and draw from there. Like I think you were doing you did some kind of property management, right? Like back when I was talking to you, or is that still something you're doing as well?
I bought my house in 2006. It's a three rental property. I
Mm-hmm.
still and I've been fixing it up off and on part time. But I want to expand, but I have to get myself financially in the position to expand. I want to take money out of it and I'll buy another house. But I've gotten to the house pretty efficient. I've replaced just about everything in the house. My return on investment is pretty good. And I only bought the house for 60,000. It's 200 miles out of New York, but I get $2,100 back a month in rent.
Mm-hmm.
and my expenses are about maybe 850. So, I'm bringing in maybe like about 1,100, $1,200. Once I pay off the mortgage, which is very little now, it'll be probably, I should be able to bring in $1,800 a month. So
Yep.
now, and I try to get another rental property, buy it out with cash, and then basically that money coming in without the mortgage and expenses, if I can get another $2,000 or $3,000 coming out, that's already 4,000 a month.
Yep.
That basically
And
have.
and then you can just do the art jobs and the art things that really bring enjoyment and fulfillment and of course passion to you, and those will work better and you'll be happier, right, as a result of that. That way you're not hustling. And that's partly too why I've been enjoying the benefits of teaching, is that I actually like teaching, but I get to take less and less shit freelance job, and I'm finding that I'm actually a lot happier because of that. Like freelance jobs, they stress me out. Like just trying to like please other people and selling all my ideas. It's great, it pays the bills, but it's like I find I really don't like it. It hasn't been for me, so I'm finding these other ways to to make it as a decently as an artist without taking a single commission. As long as I can, because I don't get any fulfillment out of that at this point. But yeah, I always recommend to people and well, artists in general that if you're really serious about doing art as a career, like you can't go wrong with taking like or educating yourself in the world of business. Like it goes hand in hand, or business and marketing even, so much. You must have to have some awareness and some knowledge of how to manage money, how and some of the intricacies that can kind of go in that, so you can stay ahead of problems, of course, that may potentially come up, and of course you can it'll help you be organized as well.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation about investing, and there's also a lot of problems where people are not really. People don't do the math. Okay, I always say to students or people, because I've been studying money for like 20 years now, and I have tons of stuff that I've listened to, and I was like, okay, so in business, people think, well, my credit score is 850. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but how much cash is coming in per month? And they go, I don't get it. It's like, well, banks will give you money because you're a cash flow, not because of your credit score. So if you want a $300,000 loan or line of credit, you have to have at least 10 grand coming in your bank account, and then they'll say, okay, we'll give you the loan. Your 850 credit score means nothing if you're making $25,000 a year. So the business side of things is that cash flow is king of business, and you want to in 3 to 4 different areas, and then you can stockpile money. But like, say you're a kid and you have $100,000, and you go, oh, now I can set up my studio. Well, you don't use that $100,000. You borrow against it. That's your collateral. That's there to borrow against to get a $500,000 loan. Then you can hire and set up your own animation studio. That's the power of money. But it's like, oh, debt's bad. There's good debt and there's bad debt.
Hmm.
My house is good debt. It's paying me money back. My car is bad debt. You
Yeah.
know, cars is bad debt. But
Cars, you just put money in, unless you're running like an Uber business or a DoorDash out of it as well to get that money back. Yeah,
your
yeah, cars are money pits.
your art business is an asset if you can get it out there and say it takes you 2 days to do a painting. You sell it for $1,000 online. That was a good asset because now you were able to make a weekly salary. Now
Hmm.
you have to repeat that 4 times a month. That's the way you have to think in terms of money. But I was never afraid of buying equipment and all these different things because I could write it off. Now
Yep.
that's changed a little bit, but these kids don't buy anything. I'm like, look, you can't just get everything off the internet. You got to buy something. You got to invest in a projector. You got to invest in a scanner. You got to invest in a computer. It's like, well, I don't have any money. It's like, well, then borrow it or get in some debt for that. But you have to have a balance. If you can't create art, then you're out of business.
Yep.
So you have to get in a little bit of debt, you pay it down, and then basically you use debt as your advantage. But I'm using myself as a guinea pig. If I become like at least get up to 500,000 a year, or I become like a semi-millionaire, then I'll do seminars online and I'll give talks and I'll say, look, I was just like you, but this is what you need to do. And I think a lot of people would really benefit from that because artists need to invest, not just in their business, but they need to invest in other vehicles. I buy silver every month. I have my real estate. I have my stock portfolio that I have like EFTs. I have, other things that are there to balance me out. And I tell you, the pandemic, this is telling people like where they stand really. Like, you had nothing saved, or you didn't have Plan B, you're going to
Yep.
be in real crap by the end of the year, or when unemployment runs out. You really have to scramble and start thinking like what you're going to do. And I have other jobs that are not art related right now because I got tired of it. I worked for Jeff Koons in 2015, 5 years ago, and it was like, I'm back to art. Yeah, he laid us off after 6 months. I was like, I thought we were going to be here for a while, but things change, and
Yep.
so like I can't trust art businesses, unfortunately. As much as it's great and it's good, I held working at Marvel, they went bankrupt.
Yeah. Nothing's safe ever.
Nothing's sacred. It's like, oh my
Yep.
god, Marvel was $1 billion company and it went bankrupt in 1996. So I'm like, ah. So I just like to have money coming in and live my life, and I'm doing my own work slowly but surely because I never really painted for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you ask the student, what do you want in life?
Yep.
And then they have to kind of like backtrack it and say, okay, I want this. Okay, then you know what you're working your ass off for. When you have goals, you don't mind staying up till 4 in the morning.
Yep.
You don't mind missing a wedding. You don't mind missing things because you have a single purpose in life. When you don't have goals, you sit around doing nothing and you complain that
Yep.
you can't do anything. And it's like, well, you're not making an effort. You know.
They
So
feel they're entitled. Like I deal with those types of people a lot as well.
not much you can do with that.
No.
Not much you can do with that. And it's like, luckily it's good maybe some of these people are not out there because they're not taking work away from us, but at the same time, the longer you're in this business, the more you have to figure out a way to kind of shuffle through all the masses and maintain what's there. So, I think students have a great opportunity. They got to think about the world,
Mm-hmm.
most people are not going to be doing stuff in the United States. They're going to be doing stuff from outside the world, and look at the world as their backyard. And living around the world would be great. And that's really going to be the trend. And if they can, cut the umbilical cord with their parents, they can live in Mexico and by the water and the Gulf, and they can illustrate down there and have a life. Pay very little, or they can live in San Diego, or they could live, in Florida and do what they need to do. So the Northeast is the most concentrated area, and in the United
Yep.
States, like I don't know if it's going to implode or if it's going to stay the same, but this pandemic is definitely screwing up a lot
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, businesses are crumbling left and right around me. I'm up in Connecticut still, and it's honestly sometimes because like I'm pretty self sufficient in my studio and stuff, but like you go to the store occasionally. There's like a strip mall down there too, and it depresses the heck out of me when I go down there. And I know like last year at this time I'd go through their pre Christmas season. The place was blooming. It was hustling with people, and you go there. It's like a condemned sort of very eerie feeling that you get, and you're like, these people all collapsed. They couldn't sustain during this time, and it's frightening and it's scary and it's sad.
Worse in 2008, but that was a time when the market crashed and nothing was being bought or sold for a year. Now the money's still out there, which is pretty good. It's just a matter of like seeing which industries survive.
Yeah.
So, we'll know by next year. We'll see how it goes. But this is a good example that people need to understand how to sacrifice and survive through these rough times to come on the other side and still do what they wanted to do. If any artist over 40, then you're lucky because usually by that time you're wiped out. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've been out of school almost 20 years now.
Yeah, I've been working without a side non-art job now for about 10 years. The last one I did was a UPS. I was driving and working UPS, and I was doing bus routes before that. It was good stuff. I could do a bus route in the morning, work on my art all in the middle of the day, take a few hours in the afternoon, go pick up some kids, come back home, and that was good. And then I got to a point where I could, I was getting enough work, I could put that on the side, and I've been self-sustaining since then. But again, I think people shouldn't be ashamed, or they shouldn't
Yeah.
there's sometimes a stigma or a misconception that like, okay, I gotta quit these other jobs, but like no, they're like, you should work however you need to get your goals, and of course to live the life that you need to, and that isn't always art related.
Well, teaching has always been the mainstay for illustrators and people. Now, what you're teaching, but on your own vehicle, which is great. And that's the thing. A lot of kids don't necessarily have to go to the colleges. They can set up their own YouTube channel and stuff like that.
Yep.
And the whole thing is colleges now are trying to get out all everybody to go online, like we're doing online. I want to go back to brick and mortar next year. I don't want to do a hybrid class and online because one, I'm not getting paid what I should. That's
Mm-hmm.
colleges don't think that teachers have the capability of setting up their own YouTube channel or setting up their own school. But we see it, the Smart Art School, the Illustration Academy. We see all these people setting up all these schools on their own and making much more money than you would teaching at a brick and mortar school. So
Yep.
colleges understand, like, if you're going to have online classes and I'm teaching 50 to 100 kids, you better bump my pay up a lot.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm not staying here. And then you take all the content too, all the videos I do, you're going to take, screw that. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I know. At least you got to get those royalties.
exactly. It's like, where's my royalties? Where, I could set up an online school and people pay $500 a month, and I'll be making much more than I would ever do teaching college and then doing projects. But I just don't want to spend that much time teaching. So, but
Mm-hmm.
that capability is there, and the schools don't understand that. It's like they don't understand that we don't need them to do our online classes for us.
Yep.
We have the ability to do it. So it's going to be interesting. A lot of colleges are going to start closing by next year.
Mm-hmm.
Places are, not going to be able to make it because it's just the students are going to move someplace else. Hell, Feng Zhu, he's got that
Yep.
great in Singapore. It's $12,000 a year, but he can lower it down to probably $1,000 a year and get freaking 5,000 people paying
Yep.
$6,000 a year, and he's making $100,000 a month. It'd be like incredible, I mean.
Yeah.
The world is global, but it's also online. It's also not in any territory, and it's not necessarily in one region.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get used to that, and that's what's happening. The globalism is happening. Problem with globalism in some ways, more in some ways, but the governments are messing up everybody's free time. So
Yep.
it's a matter of like figuring out where can I be. But I would love to be on a beach in Portugal if I can and have a summer house there and live, half the price. And so that's why my real estate now is I'm trying to build it up so that I have a good chunk of money. I can say,
Mm-hmm.
$500,000. Where do I want to live? Where do I
Yep.
want to, and I'll just buy a little bungalow on the beach someplace, and then I can paint and do whatever I want to do. And that's,
Living the dream.
to learn that. But that's the beauty that these young kids don't have to wait for.
Yep.
You could do all that stuff now, and it's like totally liberating. You're like semi-retired, doing what you like, and you don't have to subscribe to the 20th century notion of, this is what things are about.
Definitely. Well, Jim, thank you for coming on with me today. We just had kind of hit the hour mark. I don't want to take any more of your time. We could probably go on for hours about some of this stuff, but I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and bestowing all this wisdom on it to everybody that's watching.
Oh, no problem, man. I thank you so much. It is great to have you as a student. I'm so happy you did well, and I'm glad I didn't destroy your ego or anything like that. It seemed like
No, I came back for more. Maybe that's why I don't do as many figures these days, because too many comments on those hands I was drawing back in anatomy class. So I got an A minus. I think I got an A minus that term. So I wasn't absolutely terrible at figures. But yeah, maybe I think just the stress and the flashbacks of you just over my shoulder critiquing my figure work has kind of pushed me to drawing trees more.
well, the movie Animal House, and there's the little
Yes.
guys on your shoulder. That's me.
Yep. Yep.
What are you doing? It worked. So,
All right.
congratulations. Thank you so much for having me on
Thank you for coming on.
all the best to you all the time, okay?
You too. Guys, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, please leave a comment or a suggestion if you have one. Please subscribe if you like the content and haven't already. There's a lot more coming. And don't miss the previous videos and demos on styles, which you can probably click here and here. Alright, so take care.